Hello friends. This is Phoenix What If. How are you all? So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto awakened in New World and fell in love with Kiyone Kotetsu? But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also if possible share this video. The sun rose high above the Soul Society. Everyone was going about their daily business and having a good day. The Shinigami watched over this world protecting them from within the Seireitai. They were broken up into 13 guard squads that make up the Shinigami forces. It had been a year since Ichigo Kurosaki defeated Sosuke Azeon in battle and lost his Shinigami powers. Everyone was grateful for his help with that incident, but life had returned to normal. One person was walked silently towards the barrack of Squad 12. She wore a short form-fitting kimono with a white nagahugan underneath. Wrapped around her waist was a white obi with a red cord fastened around her. She has piercing green eyes and silk-like black hair that was tied in a braid. This is Nemu Kuretsuchi, lieutenant of Squad 12. She was on her way to see her father, creator Mayuri Kuretsuchi, the captain of Squad 12. He had sent a hell butterfly to her ordering her to come to the lab as soon as possible. She walked at a quick pace hoping to get there as soon as possible so not to incur her father's anger. As she walked she didn't notice someone turn the corner and the pair ran into each other. Both fell hard to the ground and Nemu looked up to see who it was. She looked at saw that it was the lieutenant of Squad 4, Azaine Kotetsu. Azaine is a tall woman with gray eyes and silver hair with two small braids on her right side. She wore the standard Shinigami uniform and was slowly getting up off the floor. "I'm sorry Nemu," Azaine said in a hurried tone, as she helped Nemu to her feet. "Captain Unohana needs me as quickly as possible, and I wasn't watching where I was going." Nemu nodded. "I understand, I too am in a hurry to see my captain," she replied in her emotionless tone. Azaine nodded and went on her way. "I see you later," she called and disappeared around a corner. Nemu watched this and sighed, again heading towards her barracks and an angered captain. "Time to go for the daily beating," she thought in a sad tone. SB. It was a beautiful day in Konoha, the village hidden in leaves, a large village hidden in a large forest. It had been rebuilt and was a bright and sunny place. The village was experiencing an unprecedented time of peace, since the ending of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. The war had ended 3 years ago, and it was all thanks to the combined efforts of the Shinobi Alliance and a certain young man. Now the alliance was slowly breaking down, and the world was returning to what it was before. This was the current dilemma the Godime Hokage, Suon Senju, was facing. She looked at the stack of paperwork before her and cried inwardly, treaty to sign, missions to Asean, and other tasks that need her signature. "Why do I have to do this?" she thought to herself in a tired tone. She wanted to relax and enjoy her time as Hokage, drinking her sake. She thought that with the end of the war she could slack off, but the paperwork had suddenly multiplied by 3. She let out another tired sigh as she set her pen down, stretching her arms high above her head. She looked toward her office door and saw that it was closed. This made her smile and she leaned toward a certain area of her desk. "I might as well have a small break," she thought with glee as she opened a secret compartment in her desk, revealing 5 bottles of the most coveted sake in Konoha. "Come to mama." Suddenly a large orange blur burst through her window, spewing glass all around the office. The sudden intrusion made Tsunade drop her bottle of sake and spill it on herself. Soon her shinobi reflexes kicked in and she grabbed the nearest projectile, which was a book, and threw it at the intruder. The book hit its target and sent the intruder flying into the wall. This wouldn't normally happen if someone else threw the book, but this was Tsunade Senju who was throwing the book. She was known for her monstrous strength, and something as simple as a book could become a deadly weapon. She watched as the intruder lay against the wall and wondered if they were conscious. Much to her relief and annoyance, the intruder slowly began to stand. The intruder was a tall guy about 6 feet 2 with long spiky blonde hair tied in a ponytail. He was wearing a black shirt with Jonin vest over it. He had black pants with orange strips on it and wore a coat with orange flames at the bottom and the kanji for fox on the back. He had dark blue eyes with 3 whiskers-like marks on his face, making him look feral. This was Naruto Uzumaki, the hero of the war and Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Naruto brushed some rubble off his shirt and looked toward Tsunade. That wasn't nice, Ba-chan, he complained, with a slight pout on his face, and after I came all this way to come see you. Tsunade threw another book at him and he barely dodged it. Damn it, brat, she growled, several veins popping out of her forehead. How many times have I told you not to call me that? Naruto just smiled and started to count on his fingers. I lost count after 200. Tsunade looked at Naruto and tried not to jump over her desk and strangle him. She leaned back in her chair, her hair falling behind the chair. So why are you here, brat? She asked in an angered tone. Naruto laced his fingers together and put his hand behind his head. Well, I kinda bored and wondering if you had any missions I could take. Tsunade narrowed her eyes as she looked over at Naruto. She could feel that something was off. Naruto had never asked to go on missions. Since there were mostly only D and C ranked mission. So either he was really bored, out of money for ramen, or he wanted to get away from something or someone. What happened, brat? She asked in a commanding tone as she watched Naruto squirm. What are you taking about? He replied in a worried tone, not looking Tsunade in the eyes. I just want to go on missions for the village. Cut the crap, Tsunade stated in an angered tone, slamming her hands against the desk. Why do you want to go on a mission? Naruto looked at Tsunade and was on his knees, large cartoon-like tears falling down his face. Please, Ba-chan, you have to give me a mission, he cried as he looked around scared. I need to get out of the village. Tsunade just sighed as she watched the crying Naruto in front of her and shook her head. What happened? She asked as she tried not to let her anger get the better of her. Naruto crawled up to her, still crying. I ruined Sakura-chan's date with the Tem. He said in a scared voice as he looked around to see if Sakura was coming. That it, she stated in an annoyed tone, just go apologize. This is Sakura-chan we are talking about. Naruto shouted as he hid under Tsunade's desk, she going to kill me. This was her first date with Sasuke. Tsunade grabbed Naruto from under her desk and threw him across the room and back into the wall. Stop crying, brat, she commanded as she shook her head. I should leave you to deal with you fate, but since I feeling generous I actually have a mission for you. SB. Nemu stepped into the lab, stood by the monitors, and watched as her father worked around a new machine he had made. The other member of the science division scurried around working on other projects scattered around the room. He turned and saw her standing there. A look of annoyance appeared on his face. There you are, you stupid girl, he said as walked over to her and slapped her across the face. You are supposed to be here as soon as I call you, is the clear? Yes, father, she said looking at the ground. Inwardly she was crying. She hated her father, and hated that he hurt her. Mayuri looked at his daughter. Follow me, he stated as he exited the main lab area and headed down a low-lit hallway to one of the more private labs. Nemu followed after her father and looked around the lab. It was filled with many different tables. Some were empty, some were filled with papyrs and others had hollows tied down to them. Mayuri had walked past all of his other works and led Nemu to a large screen-like machine. It had wires flowing to a large power generator. Mayuri walked over to a control panel on the side of the machine and motioned for Nemu to join him. What is this? She asked as she looked at the machine. This had been the object of Mayuri's attention as of late, so it must be of something of great importance. This, my failed experiment, is a window into a world that we have never seen, he said with pride as he ran his hand over the machine. I have discovered a world unknown to us. Think of all the things we will learn. Another world, Nemu stated as a hint of shock could be heard in her normally emotionless tone. Have you reported this to the head captain? Why would I report this to that buffoon? Mayuri stated as it was an obvious answer and glared at Nemu. Nemu thought for a moment before answering. He could authorize an expedition to that world, she said with her head lowered in submissiveness. Mayuri looked at her and slapped her across the face. Why didn't you mention it earlier, you stupid girl? Yes, sir, she replied in her emotionless voice. She watched as Mayuri left the room, leaving her alone on the floor. Later in captain meeting. So I feel it would be very informative if we sent a team to this world and see what they have to offer us, Mayuri stated to the entire captain, hoping they would approve it. Many of the captains were a bit skeptical of this discovery. So you're telling us there is another world we have no knowledge and you want to go and explore it, said Toshiro Hitsugaya, captain of Squad 10. Exactly, Mayuri stated with pride. A new world to learn new things, maybe new powers. Are you out of your mind? Hitsugaya said angrily. We are still recovering from the war and you want us to waste precious manpower to visit a world that might be hostile to us. But wouldn't it be a good idea for you to learn about this world? They may have a way to help strengthen our forces. Said Retsu Unohana, captain of Squad 4, her usual smile across her beautiful face. I say we just leave them be, Captain Soi Fan, leader of Squad 2, stated in a cold tone. If we interact with that world it could turn ugly. Captain Yamamoto was silent throughout the entire discussion. He tapped his cane on the ground to get everyone's attention in the room. I believe it is in the best interest of the Soul Society if we do send someone to explore this new world. He commanded. Mayuri smiled and was about to speak when he was cut off by the head captain, but we will be sending only a pair there is not to waste any forces. They must be at least lieutenants. I will send Nemu, Mayuri stated as if it was the easy thing to do. She knows what we need to get and she can get it quickly. Many of the other captains were nervous about sending their lieutenants to this new world and Mayuri knew if no one steps up they would go. I will send Azane, Captain Unohana said finally, much to the surprise of the other captains. Retsu, are you sure that is wise? Asked Jashiro Yukitaki, captain of Squad 13. Yes, it is best to have a healer in the group in case things turn hostile, Unohana stated and everyone nodded in agreement. So it is settled then, Captain Yamamoto said. Lieutenants Azane Kotetsu and Nemu Kuretsuchi will travel to this new world and gather intel on its inhabitants and Halo activity. Dismissed. S.B. Naruto looked at the mission scroll and sighed. It was a simple bandit raid mission. He was heading to a town on the edge of the Land of Fire near the border of the Land of Winds. They were having trouble with a large group of bandits stealing their food and taking their women as slaves. Naruto knew it was just a C rank but he wished she had at least a B ranked, but then again beggars can't be choosers. As he approached the village, he heard someone scream. He picked up the pass and raced towards the village. As it came into view, he saw the bandits were raiding. He quickly pulled out a 3-pronged kunai and threw it into the middle of the village. As soon as the kunai landed, he disappeared in a yellow flash. A bandit was having the time of his life. They were raiding the village again and he was about to get the one girl he had his eye on since they had gotten there. As he was about to have his fun he watched as a strange-looking kunai fell out of the sky and hit the ground. He looked at it for a moment when suddenly a yellow flash appeared and he felt a blade of cold steel go into his body. The young girl looked up and saw a tall man with long spiked blonde hair standing over her. He put his fingers to his mouth telling he to stay quiet and pointed towards one of the house so she could hide. She smiled at him and nodded quickly running to the house. Naruto watched and made sure she was at the house before disappearing in a yellow flash. Soon the cries of dying bandits filled the air as Naruto hunted them down and slayed them without mercy. Soon only one bandit left. He looked all around for the attacker but saw nothing. Show yourself, he shouted, his legs trembling. He soon heard a laugh filled the air. I am everywhere, the voice said, causing the bandit to shake with fear. I'm not scared of you. He stammered only to hear the laugh again. You will be, it said, and he felt a blade against his neck. So know what you can tell me about the other bandits. Naruto said to him. S.B. Nemu and Azane stood next to each other with their things packed. They were waiting on Mayuri to open a portal to this new world and they both were nervous. They wondered what was on the other side and what type of people or things lived there. So Nemu, are you ready for this? Azane asked with a nervous smile. She never expected for Captain Unohana to send her on this mission. I am, she said flatly, not wanting to look weak in front of her father. I will explore his order. Yeah, Azane said and turned to watch Mayuri work. He moved around the machine and was tinkering with some of the wiring. I hope this is a safe journey, Azane thought to herself as she looked at the machine, not really trusting it. Mayuri was standing in front of the viewing machine before turning towards the two girls. We are almost ready, he stated and then handed them 2 modified lieutenant's badges. These will be your homing signals in case something goes wrong. Just put some rice stew into them and we will home in on your positions. Both girls nodded and he continued. You need to first find a settlement and observe the people, next find out if they have any type of powers at all, and lastly see if there is any Halo activity there. Yes, Captain, they said in unison, and Mayuri smiled as he headed to the control panel of the machine. Now let's get this show on the road, he stated and pressed a button that started the machine. Soon a loud sound filled the room and a senkaman that had black-white doors opened up for them. I wish you good researching, he said as he watched the girls enter the door. The trip through the senkaman was different, to say at least. Once they stepped through, they found themselves surrounded by trees. Nemu looked around and saw the sun bearing down on them. Azane looked and saw many animals she already knew of running out. Let's get moving, Nemu said and started to walk. Azane followed and soon they found a road. It was dirt but seemed to be well maintained. Well, this is convenient, Azane said, and Nemu nodded as they looked around for any signs of life. They walked down the road when they saw a small village come into view. It was a very simple layout, one main road that traveled through town and small house in the side streets. Azane walked a bit further ahead than Nemu and saw that some of the villagers were looking at her. It seemed to be many of the male villagers. Is it just me or do they see us? Azane said to her companion, a bit uncomfortable at all the stares they were receiving. Nemu saw that villagers looking at them. It seems that way, she replied in a slightly curious tone. Let's test this hypothesis. They walked towards one of the street vendors and waited to see if the vendor could see them. He looked at them with a smile and said, "What can I get you this fine day, ladies?" "You can see us?" Nemu asked, and the vendor looked at them as if they were crazy. "Of course, who won't notice two pretty lasses," he said with a confused look on his face, but he didn't let that deter him. He quickly grabbed Azane's hand and pulled her towards the stall. "Let me show my fine items." Azane looked at Nemu and whispered, "He can touch me." Nemu nodded and turned towards the vendor. "I'm sorry, but we have to go," she said and pulled Azane away. As they walked, they noticed that they bumped into everyone they passed. "What's going on?" Azane said as they walked out of town, a bit worried at the new development. Nemu thought for a moment before she said, "It seems we are like the living in this world." "So we are like the living in this world?" Azane said with a look of surprise on her face. "It seemed that way," Nemu said as she wrote it down in her notebook. "So what do we do?" Azane said in a worried tone as she looked around. "We just have to adjust our way of doing things," Nemu said as they walked down the road. "How do we do that?" Azane said with confusion. "We know nothing about this world. We act like everyone else," Nemu stated and walked down the road. Azane nodded and they continued on their way. As night set in, they made camp in a clearing in the forest. As they set up camp, they noticed it was too quiet. "This is creepy," Azane said looking around the forest. It was different from the forest back home and it didn't sit well with her. Nemu looked around and agreed, "Yes, it is," she said. "Maybe it because there is a lot of hollow activity at night." "I don't think so," Azane said. "I don't feel any hollows near at all. I just feel as if someone watching us." "We will have to vary this," Nemu said and got up. "I shall scout around and see what I can find." "I don't think that is a good idea," Azane said as she felt a presence in the trees. "It's fine, I won't be gone long," Nemu stated and walked into the trees. As Nemu walked around, she tried to feel a hollow rice but she could feel it at all. She did feel a weird sort of energy but she couldn't get a handle on it. She stopped and extended her senses only to be grabbed from behind. Nemu quickly reacted and grabbed the person behind her and flipped them over her shoulder. She got a good look at the attacker. He was a very plain-looking man with a metal headband on his forehead. "Who are you?" Nemu demanded as she held her hand against her attacker's neck. Her attackers just smiled. "You will know soon enough," he stated with a knowing tone. Not fearing Nemu. Suddenly Nemu felt their presence behind her but reacted too late when she was suddenly hit hard at the base of her neck. She fell slowly to the ground as her eyes slowly closed, her original attacker smiling at her. Azane noticed that Nemu's spiritual pressure suddenly dipped and quickly stood up and pulled out her Zanpakuto and stood with her guard up. As she listened, she felt a tremor from underneath and tried to get away only to have a pair of hands grab her and pull her under. SB. Naruto jumped from tree to tree heading towards the bandit's camp. The bandit he had captured and silenced told him that a group of missing nin formed Kumo led it. They were C-rank missing nin in Naruto's side. He was hoping for at least someone who would give him a decent fight. As he spotted the camp, he formed a cross-shaped hand seal and said, Kage Bushin no just you. Soon 5 clones stood next to him and he ordered them to scout the perimeter and find if they had any prisoner. He waited for his clone to dispel and he soon got all the memories and knew they had a cage of women near the west side of camp and that the missing nin had brought in 2 more. They were taken to a tent in the middle of camp. He knew he had to save them before anything bad happened. Let's do this, he said and faded into the night. SB. Azane started to wake up and felt a cold draft against her skin. As she opened her eyes she noticed that she was only in her bra and panties and she was tied to a pole. Next to her was Nemu in her black panties and bra. They were in a large tent that seemed to have furs covering the floor, with weapons scattered all around the tent. She looked around and saw that their things were in a pile in the corner. The flap suddenly opened to reveal 2 men with strange things on their foreheads. To her it looked like a pair of clouds but there was a line through it. Looks like one is awake. One of the men said. He was about average height and had short green hair. Who are you? Azane said as she tried to get out of her bonds. I am your new master, the shorter man said with a smile. Now be a good girl and it won't hurt much. Azane tried to undo her bonds but they were too tight. I am going to die here. Suddenly the sound of people dying filled the air. A bandit ran in and said, "We're under attack," he said and ran back outside. The 2 men looked at each other and the taller one said, "Go check it out." His partner nodded and headed out. The other one looked at Azane, said, "Where were we?" and walked towards her, as she tried to get away in fear. SB. Naruto was taking out the bandits as quickly as possible. He created over 50 clones and had them attack the camp at once. He had a group of clones free the girls from the cages and led them to safety. As he took out bandits left and right he felt the memories of one of his clones enter his mind. One of the missing nin was out and ready to fight. Naruto headed towards the middle of the camp and landed in front of the man. So you're the one who attacking out camp? The nin said with anger as he glared at Naruto. Yep, that me, Naruto said with a smile. Fine, I just kill you and go back to having my fun. The nin said and went through a few hand sign. Doden, mud dragon Justu, a large dragon came from the ground and head towards Naruto. Naruto dodged to the side and went through his own set of hand sign, Fuden, air bullets. He sent 5 large balls of compressed air at his target. The missing nin eyes widen and he flashed a set of hand signs Doden, earth wall, a wall of earth came up from the group and blocked the wind. Naruto ran towards him and went up the wall. He jumped off the top and a ball of blue energy formed in his hand, Rasengan. Naruto thrust his hand forward and caught his target in the head. As Naruto landed nothing was left of the missing nin. 1 down and 1 to go, Naruto said and headed towards the tent where the 2 girls were being held. SB. Azane watched in fear as the man came towards her. She tried to get away but she was trapped. As he was about to grab her, when a blade suddenly burst through his heart. Azane watched in horror as the man dropped to the ground dead and turned to see who did it. Standing in front of her was a tall man with long blonde hair and he was wearing a headband like the others but it had a different symbol. Are you okay? He said and reached for her causing Azane to move away. He noticed this and stopped. I am not going to hurt you, he said and put his hand up. Azane looked at him and slowly nodded. He came toward her and untied her bonds. As her arms fell from the pole she pulled them close to her body. She was so scared, if he handed come that man would have had his way with her. She shive RD and started to cry only to find something wrapped around her shoulders. She looked up and saw that the man had taken off his jacket and put it around her. He left her, went over to Nemu, and untied her from her bonds. Since she was still unconscious, he held her gently in his arms. Azane slowly stood up and walked towards him. Thank you, she said as he set down Nemu slowly. It's not a problem, he said with a smile, just doing my job. He looked at her and smiled. Let's get out of here, he said and picked up Nemu in his arms and head out of the tent. Azane nodded and started to follow only to stop and head over to grab their Zanpakuto. She didn't notice that she left the modified badges in the tent. SB. Nemu slowly opened her eyes and looked around. She noticed that she was in a bed and that she was not fully clothed. She sat up and held the blanket to her and looked around to see where she was. The door opened and she tensed only to see Azane walk through with a bowl of food in her hand. She was wearing a black t-shirt that seemed to hug her form, with a pair of white capri pants. "Oh good, you're awake," she said with a smile. "Where are we?" Nemu said, looking around the room. It was a simple room with 2 beds and a small dresser. "We are currently in an inn," Azane said as she set down the bowl of food on the nightstand. "We were attacked 2 nights ago and you've been out cold." "Then how are we here?" Nemu asked, afraid of the answer. "I will be the one to answer that," said a voice by the door, and Nemu turned to see a blonde-haired man standing by the door. "Naruto Uzumaki, at your service." "What happened?" Nemu asked, and Azane proceeded to explain what had happened. Nemu listened as was extreme grateful for what Naruto had done for them. She turned to Azane and said, "Where are our things?" "I was only able to grab our Zanpakuto," Azane said with a hint of sadness in her voice. "I couldn't get the badges." Nemu looked at Azane with what looked like shock. They were stuck. Without those badges they couldn't get home. Naruto noticed this and saw that they were in trouble. "Hey, it's okay, you guys can come with me to Konoha," he said with a smile. "Konoha?" Nemu said with a questioning look. "Yeah, it's my home," he said. "I think we can help you try and get home." Nemu knew that if they wanted to get home that they need someone help. "Fine, okay," Nemu said. "Great," Naruto said with a smile. "Well, I leave you 2 alone. If you need me, I be in the next room." "Do you think we can trust him?" Nemu said, looking at her partner. Azane looked at Nemu and said, "He saved us when he could have had our way with us, but he didn't. So I think we should trust him." She watched as Azane looked toward the door. "Fine, we will trust him for now," Nemu said, and proceeded to eat the food on the table. "Also, can you help me find some clothes?" SB. Naruto, Nemu, and Azane walked up the road, and soon they saw the large gates of Konoha. Nemu and Azane looked at the gates in awe. They have never seen anything like it. As they approached the gates, they noticed that many people were staring at them. "Why are they staring?" Nemu said to Azane, who just shrugged. Soon they were stopped at the front gate and saw the 2 gate guards coming towards them. "Welcome to Konoha," said one of the gate guard when he saw Naruto. "Hey Naruto, how you been?" "Hey Izumo," Naruto said with a smile. They been well, just got done with a mission." "Nice," Izumo said with a smile and looked at Nemu and Azane. "And who are these 2 lovely ladies?" Azane blushed and Nemu looked at Izumo with confusion. Naruto smiled and said, "This is Nemu and Azane. I helped out while on my mission. I am taking them to see the Tsunade Ba-chan to see if we can help them get home." "That are Naruto," said Izumo and patted him on the back. He pulled out a clipboard and had them write down their names. After everything was said and done, Izumo smiled. "Enjoy your stay in Konoha." Naruto started to walk and waved bye to Izumo with the girls following close behind. Azane looked around the village in awe. It was huge. She looked up and saw 5 faces coming out of the side of the cliff. "I wonder who they are," she thought to herself as they walked. Nemu watched as people with the same headband as Naruto ran around the village. It seemed that everyone who wore it was part of some group, and this group seemed to be fairly large. She also saw many of them would wave or stop and say hi to Naruto, meaning he was respected. Soon a large tower came into sight, causing Nemu curiosity to peek. "Let's go see Ba-chan," Naruto said and led them up to the top of the tower. As they approached a large set of doors, a girl with short black hair, wearing a blackish-blue kimono, looked up to see them walking towards her. She got up and walked over to Naruto, giving him a large hug. "I missed you," she said with a smile. "Me too, Shizune Oni-chan," Naruto said, "but I only been gone a week." "That's true, but it's still too quiet without you here," she said with a laugh. Naruto just laughed and gave her a big smile. Shizune smiled back at him and then noticed Azane and Nemu standing behind him. "Naruto, who are the 2 women behind you?" "This is Nemu and Azane," Naruto said, introducing the pair. "I helped them on my mission and I brought them to talk to Ba-chan to see if we can help them get home." "That is so you, Naruto," Shizune said with a smile. "Be nice, she having a bad day." "Got it," he said and headed toward the doors. He opened the door and shouted, "Hi Baa-chan." Tsunade jumped out of her chair and looked at her godson. "Naruto," she said and punched him across the room. Azane and Nemu watched in awe as Naruto flew through a wall and landed on the ground hard. "Don't startle me like that." Naruto slowly got up and walked over. Sorry Ba-chan, he said with a smile. Tsunade smiled and then noticed the girls. Naruto, why are there two girls with you? She said looking at her son. If you got them pregnant you're responsible for your action. Azane blushed and Nemu looked at Tsunade as if she was crazy. No, that is not what going on. She said to Tsunade. Naruto offered to bring us here and see if you could help us get home. Oh, he did, Tsunade said shaking her head. She turned to Naruto. So how did you meet them? Naruto proceeded to give his mission report and Tsunade listened intently. She looked at her son and said, we can see what we can do, but in the meantime they are your responsibility while they are in the village. Is that understood? Yes Ba-chan, he said with a smile. That's a good boy, she said and looked at Nemu and Azane. Welcome to Konoha, I am Tsunade Senju, Godime Hokage. I am Azane Kotetsu, Azane said with a small bow. Nemu Kuretsuchi, Nemu said mirroring her friend. It is nice to meet you, Tsunade replied. So where are you two from? Azane started to get nervous wondering what they were going to tell her, but Nemu stepped up and said, we come from across the sea, we are here to see what your culture is like and how we can find ways to help each other. Tsunade's eyes narrowed, she felt something was off with their story but knew she could prove anything. In addition, it seemed that they were completely honest about want to learn about them. She decided to have Naruto with them at all time, also to have a few Anbu follow them as well. She smiled and said, welcome to Konoha. Thank you for having us, Azane said with a smile. Tsunade smiled and said, while you are in our village you are to stay with Naruto at all time, is that clear? Yes ma'am, they said in unison, not wanting to anger the only help they were receiving. Tsunade looked at Naruto and said, take care of them. She watched as her saluted in understanding. Yes ma'am, he said with a smile and they headed out of her office. I have a feeling life is going to get a lot more interesting, she said to herself and reached for a bottle of sake. S.B. Mayuri stood by his machine and waited for Nemu to check in. They were supposed to check in after the first day to report their progress, but it had been more than 3 days. At first, he thought it was Nemu being her usually stupid self, but he knew she wouldn't be this late. Activate their homing beacons, he ordered one of the researchers and waited for them to do their work. After a few minutes one of the researchers waved to Mayuri. Sir, we can't find their signals, he said with a frantic tone as he reviewed the monitor. What do you mean we can't find their signals? Mayuri shouted and looked at the screen. The scan stated that their signals were not found. This can't be good, Mayuri said. Captain Mayuri stood in front of the other captain with several large screens behind him. As you can see, there is some interference with the signal, so currently we are unable to locate the lieutenants that were sent to the other world, he explained as he used a pointer stick to help direct everyone's attention to one of the screens. We are working to re-establish contact as soon as possible. Captain Hitsugaya glared at Mayuri for the blatant disregard for the missing lieutenants. Why we were not informed at the first moments when they did not check in? He asked in a slightly angered tone, his hand hovering over his zanpakuto. It was not a problem that they did not contact us at the right time, Mayuri stated as he waved off Captain Hitsugaya's question. We did not expect for the interference and it was a small mistake on my part that will be quickly rectified. That is not the point, Hitsugaya shouted, nearly drawing his sword. You sent 2 lieutenants to a world we know nothing about and now we are unable to contact them at all. They could be hurt, captured or worse dead. Many of the other captains agreed with Captain Hitsugaya's statements. Mayuri just shook his head in annoyance. I can see where you are coming from, Captain Hitsugaya, he stated in his usual condescending tone. Those are possibilities, but we do not know what has happened. Even if they were captured they would not say anything about the Soul Soisti, and it will allow me to build updated Nemu I wanted to build as of late. An upgrade model, Captain Unohana said in a sweet tone as she turned to look at Mayuri with her sickening sweet smile spread across her face. This made Mayuri flinch back a bit. I would hope you would have more concern for your own daughter and my lieutenant's safety, Mayuri, or otherwise we will need to have a long discussion. Mayuri just nodded slowly. Of course, he replied, a hint of fear in his voice. I will make sure their safety is my most important priority. Captain Unohana just nodded her dark aura, lessing. That good, I would be saddened if it was not. She said as Mayuri let out a small sigh of relief. Captain Kuretsuchi, Head Captain Yamamoto stated in a commanding tone, as he slowly tapped his cane against the floor. You are to locate the lieutenants as soon as possible and bring them back to the Soul Soisty, is that clear? Captain Kuretsuchi nodded. It will be done, he said with a bow and quickly fled the room. S.B. Naruto, Nemu and Azane walked through the busy streets of the main market street of Konoha. They were headed to the clothing store to get some new clothes for Nemu and Azane. Since they only had the clothes that Naruto was able to get after he had rescued them from the missing nin camp. Nemu watched as many of the villagers and took mental notes off how they acted and interacted. She saw that it was similar to the Rukongai, but a lot nicer. It seemed that most people in the village were pretty well off. She also noticed that a group of people seemed to travel by rooftops. They all wore a similar get-up. A pair of dark blue pants, a dark blue shirt, a dark green flak jacket, and a metal headband that had a leaf design on it. She noticed that Naruto also wore a headband as well. Naruto, Nemu asked in a curious tone as she continued to observe the people on the roofs. I have noticed that many different people are traveling via rooftop. Why is that and what is the purpose of those people? Naruto turned to looked at Nemu and his face seemed to brighten with pride. He puffed out his chest and stuck a pose. Those people are shinobi, he stated with a proud tone. They are the protector of the village and do mission that help the village raise to greater heights. Nemu nodded in understanding. So they are the military forces for this village. She stated as she stopped to process the information. She grabbed her braid as she thought. It was a habit of hers when she was processing information. Are there other shinobis out there? Naruto nodded. There are 5 great villages that have shinobi core. He stated as a look of fondness spread across his face, as he remembered the friends he made in other villages. Also there are small villages out there. What else can you tell me about these shinobi? She stated as she went into data collection more. Do they have special powers? When do they start training to be shinobi? What are the requirements to be a shinobi? What are the other villages like? She leaned in closer and closer to Naruto after each question, till she was an inch away from Naruto's face. Naruto blushed at the closeness of Nemu and stuttered for a few moments trying to form some form of words. Thankfully Azane came to Naruto's rescue and placed a hand on Nemu's shoulder pulling her out of her data mode. Nemu, she said in a calm tone, you're scaring him. Nemu backed away slowly from Naruto. I am sorry, she said in her emotionless tone, bowing her head submissively out of habit. I was caught up in the moment. Naruto just smiled widely, walked over to Nemu and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It's okay, he said in a cheery tone. I kind of got confused by all the questions at once but I will try to answer all of them if I can, but right now we need to get you and Azane some new clothes. Nemu nodded, but inwardly she was very surprised. She had done that to her father once and he had hit her. She was used to being treated like she was an annoyance. Yet here was someone who had treated her like a person and it was a different feeling. It felt nice. The trio continued onward to the clothing store at a brisk pace and Nemu focused on her new point of interest, her blonde guide to this new place. S.B. The trio arrived at the Dancing Leaf clothing store, the best place for women's clothing in Konoha. It was run by a retired shinobi who specialized in thread-based jutsu and turned it into a successful clothing business. Many wealthy women had ordered specialized clothing from her, from all over the elemental nations. Azane and Nemu looked around the store and couldn't help but marvel at all the different kinds of clothing they had. Rangaku would have a field day at this store. Well, pick out anything you like, Naruto said with a smile, folding his hand behind his head. It on me. Azane smiled and bowed in thanks. Thank you, she said sincerely and Nemu bowed as well. Naruto blushed and rubbed the back of his head. It is nothing, he said with a smile. It is my pleasure. Azane just smiled and walked down the aisle and Nemu quickly walked toward the kimono sections. She always prefers kimonos over regular clothes and went to find a color she liked. Naruto just watched them and let out a small sigh of relief. He had been in this store a few times with Ino and she made him carry all her bags. Sai was sick that day and promised to go shopping with her and as any good teammate, he decided to help out. He regretted the decision. He promised himself he would never take Ino shopping again. Hey Naruto, said an all too familiar voice, that sent shivers down his spine. Naruto slowly turned and saw Ino and Sai standing there. Ino wore her regular outfit and Sai was unable to be seen with all the bags in front of him. Naruto stared at Ino in shock as he tried to get over his shock of meeting Ino there. He shouldn't be surprised, but still, did she really need that much clothes? Ino waved her hand in front of Naruto's face, trying to get him over his shock. "Earth to Naruto," she said as he started to wake from his shock. "You there?" Naruto quickly shook her head and gave Ino a worried smile. "Hey Ino," he said as he tried to assess the situation without hurting his head. "What brings you here?" Ino looked at Naruto with suspicion. She knew that he hated to be in this store unless absolutely necessary. "Naruto, what brings you to the dancing leaf?" she asked in a curious voice, her inner gossip running wild. "Just bringing some people who need clothes," Naruto replied as he tried to play it off as it was nothing. "Who needed clothes?" Ino asked in a sweet voice as she leaned in close to Naruto. Sai listened to the conversation and heard the change in Ino's voice and felt instantly sorry for Naruto. Whenever he heard that tone of voice, he knew Ino was on the gossip hunt and nothing would stop her. "Good luck, Naruto," he thought as he moved around with the bags in his hands. "You will need it." Naruto slowly backed away from Ino, not wanting her to misunderstand the situation he was in. He hoped that Nemu and Azane were still trying on clothes. Unfortunately, Karma was not on his side and Nemu was walking toward him with several short kimonos in her hands. "I feel these will be the most appropriate for me," she said in her emotionless tone. On the inside she was quite happy. She secretly loved to shop, but was working too much to ever get out. She mostly shopped online when Mayuri was not at their home. Naruto just nodded and slowly turned to the smirking Ino. "I am so dead," Naruto thought as he watched Ino's eyes brighten at the new information she had just obtained. "Naruto, are you going to introduce us to your new friend?" Ino asked as she placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, making him freeze in fright. Nemu watched Naruto's reaction and looked at the girl standing next to Naruto. She was a little smaller than Naruto, with long blonde hair, with very light blue eyes. She seemed to be very confident and liked to gather information. "I am Nemu Kuretsuchi," Nemu stated in a calm tone as she watched Ino. She handed Naruto the kimonos she had picked out and walked toward Ino. "Naruto brought my friend and I here to get new clothing since our were lost." Ino nodded as she listened to this new information, and quickly moved into her extreme gossip mode. "So how did you and your friend meet Naruto?" she asked with a cheery tone. Nemu was about to answer when Azane poked her head out from the dressing room. "Nemu," she called, a slight blush on her face. "I having some trouble with a certain item." Ino saw Azane and quickly walked over to her. "What the problem?" she asked as she went into fashion mode. Naruto watched in awe on how quickly Ino switched modes, and couldn't help but shake his head in disbelief. Azane was still blushing and thought Ino was a member of the staff at the store and motioned for her to come closer. She whispered something into Ino's ear. Ino's smile grew as Azane finished speaking. "It is okay," Ino said with a gleeful voice. "We will get you all set up and you will look great." She waved toward one of the Dancing Leaf employees and also to Nemu. Nemu and the employee walked over to Ino and Naruto watched them and suddenly felt his body go numb. "Why do I feel as if I going to be broke after this?" he thought as Ino began running through the clothes racks. SB. Naruto walked with an armful of bags alongside Sai. After Ino had started to help Azane pick out clothes and other items that Naruto preferred not to mention. His wallet was suddenly a lot lighter and his arms filled with bags. He wanted to make a ceiling scroll but Ino would not allow it. "A gentleman must carry the women's bags," she stated in a knowing tone, as she put bag after bag into Naruto's arms. "So be a gentleman and hold their bags." So Naruto walked with many bags in his arms with Nemu and Azane walking behind him. They had tried to tell Ino that they were able to carry their own bags, but Ino had told them the best way to control your man was to make him carry your bags. Ino walked beside Azane and watched her and Nemu with interest. It was not surprising that Naruto had helped them out. No, the surprising thing was that he was actually actively helping and not being paid to do it. She had heard all the stories of him helping princess, priestess, and even a revived shinobi girl from the Fourth War. Yet he had always left after the mission was done. Now he was helping these two and not leaving them alone. He was actively shopping with them. It was puzzling and interesting at the same time, and Ino was determined to figure it out. She began to plan to get Sai to bring her to Naruto's place as long as Nemu and Azane were in town. Ino turned and looked at Sai. "Well, this is where we part ways," she said with a smile as she planned to go see Shikamaru and make plans to find out more about Nemu and Azane. "Maybe we can hang out later and have some girl time." Azane smiled. "That would be nice," she said with a cheery voice. Surprised by how friendly everyone in the village was being. "I hope we can get together soon." Ino nodded and started to lead Sai away and into the crowd. Nemu watched them leave and wondered what else she could learn by interacting with other females in the village. "Hey," Naruto said in a hurried tone as he walked forward with the bags, nearly falling over. "Man with many bags needs to get home." SB. The trio had hurried to Naruto home and dropped off the bags. Nemu and Azane had explored his home for a bit. It was a traditional Japanese-style home, with a large spacious yard, with a small lake near the south edge and forest area to the north. Nemu walked around the living room and took in the layout. There was a small blue couch that seemed to be able to fold down into a bed, 2 love seats and a small glass coffee table. Overall it was a nice layout and something a single male would live in. She was about to explore further when Naruto reappeared. "Well, let me show you to your rooms," he stated in a tired tone, as he was very happy to get rid of the bags in his arms. "If you would follow me." Azane and Nemu followed Naruto down the hall and saw more pictures upon the wall. Nemu noticed that many were of Naruto when he seemed to be at a younger age. He wore a hideous orange jumpsuit in most of the pictures. She was drawn to one picture that had Naruto in it when he was about 5 years old. He was standing with an older man that wore a white and red hat that said Hokage on it. He was one of the faces on the mountain, Nemu thought as she studied the picture. He must be an important person in the village, yet here he was with a young boy. She continued to ponder these questions when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned and saw Naruto standing behind her with a large smile on his face. "I see you like that picture," he said as he looked at the picture with fondness. Nemu nodded as she studied his expression. "Yes," she stated in a curious tone. "I was wondering who the man standing with you in the picture is. I saw his face on the side of the mountain." "That is Gigi," Naruto said with a warm voice, a sad smile spreading on his face. "He was the 3rd Hokage. He helped take care of me when I was young." "So he was your grandfather?" Nemu stated as she turned to look at Naruto. Naruto just nodded. "Yeah, he was, not by blood though," he replied as he ran his hand across the picture. "I am an orphan, and Gigi helped me out and took me under his wing." "Would you tell me more about him?" Nemu asked as she started to stroke her braid, a hint of longing in her voice. She wished she had someone who really took care of her when she was growing up, and being treated like an experiment. Naruto smiled. "Of course," he stated in a calming tone, and turned to head back down the hall. "But later, first I need to show you to your rooms. Then we are going to get the food of the gods." Nemu looked at Naruto with confusion. "Food of the gods?" she asked as her mind created my different hypothesis about this new information. Naruto nodded and struck a pose. His knees were slightly bent, one arm pointed out. "The food of the gods is ramen," he stated in a preaching tone. "It is the most amazing food on all the planet. No one must not know of this blessing." Nemu looked at Naruto for a few moments before she let a small giggle escape her lips, but she quickly stopped. Naruto didn't notice this as he continued his triad on ramen. She had never once laughed or giggled back in the soul soisti. Yet this man was able to make her laugh after only know her for more than a week. She had to admit he did permit further study. SB. Azane, Nemu and Naruto were once again walking through the village, heading toward Ikuruka Ramen. Azane had noticed the way Nemu was studying Naruto and wondered why she was so interested in the blonde. As they walked, Azane noticed a bright pink-haired girl stomping toward them. She wore a red shirt with no sleeves, a pair of tight shorts covered by a skirt, and had a headband in her hair. She seemed to focus on Naruto, an angered expression on her face. "Naruto!" she shouted and grabbed him by his collar and proceeded to shake him violently. "You ruined my date with Sasuke. Do you know how long I've been waiting for that? Do you?" Nemu watched in fascination as the pink-haired girl proceeded to beat their caretaker to a bloody pulp. Excuse me," Azane said, getting the pink-haired girl's attention. I can understand you wanting to get back at him for ruining something very important, but we need him alive if you please. The girl turned and looked at Azane, a slightly annoyed look on her face as she dropped Naruto to the ground. And who are you? She asked as she narrowed her eyes as she eyed both Nemu and Azane. I am Azane Kotetsu, Azane replied, in a no-threatening tone. We are new to the village and Naruto was put in charge of our safekeeping. The girl nodded. I am Sakura Haruno, she stated as she looked down at the bloody pulp that is Naruto. I am this Baka teammate. If he is your teammate, Nemu stated as she accessed the situation, why did you attack him? Sakura gave them a sheepish smile and chuckled. Well, it kind of personal, she stated as she looked away from the inquisitive Nemu. Let's just say he deserved it. Well, I have to be going. Sakura soon disappeared into the crowd as quickly as she appeared, leaving a confused Azane, a puzzled Nemu and a beaten Naruto. This world is amusing, Nemu stated as she walked toward Naruto, planning on getting answers on why Sakura beat him into a submission. SB. Nemu sat on her bed and pondered what had transpired of the course of their expedition to this world. It seemed that the people here had very high spiritual pressures, but there was no signs of hollow activity as of yet. What puzzled her most was the culture of the people. They seemed to be a mixture of the modern world and the old ways, like the Soul Society, but in an entirely different way. As she continued to ponder her thoughts, she didn't notice Azane walk in the room with only a large t-shirt on. Hey Nemu, Azane said, getting the Nemu attention, as she walked over to Nemu's bed. Yes Azane, she asked, wondering what her partner wanted. She had just finished rebraiding her hair. Azane sat down next to her and sighed. It's been a weird couple of days, hasn't it? Nemu thought about it for a moment and agreed. It had been a weird couple of days. They have traveled to a new world that they knew nothing about, and they could be seen and touched by everyone here. They were captured by a group of bandits and nearly but were saved by their new blonde friend. Now they were staying in his house and he was their bodyguard. Yes, it has been, she finally said as she got all her thoughts in order. Azane lied back and stared at the ceiling. This world is a lot different from the Soul Society. Yes it is, Nemu said as she reviewed her notes she had written down after they had returned for getting food, and I can't wait to learn more about it. Azane smiled and thought of a certain blonde. I feel the same, she said and got up and headed towards her bed. Night, Nemu. Sleep well Azane, Nemu said and turned off the light and got into her bed. The blankets covered her form, allowing her to fall asleep with dreams about a certain blonde. SB. Naruto sat on his roof gathering sage chakra. He could feel Nemu and Azane in the house and everyone else in the village. As he sat there, he felt a familiar presence fill his head. Hi brat, Kurama said inside of Naruto's head. Naruto sighed and let go of the nature chakra he had gathered. Hey Kurama, what's up? Oh nothing, just wondering if you're going to mate with the two in the house. Kurama said with a perverted grin. Ero Kitsune, Naruto replied, shaking his head. After the war, he and Kurama had formed a somewhat strained friendship. Naruto knew if it wasn't for Kurama he would have died when he was little, and Kurama knew without Naruto he would be sealed in a statue with his brother and sisters. So they had put aside their differences and became friends. It worked at some points and at other they wanted to kill each other, but they got past all that. Kurama rolled his eyes and replied, I know you want to. You haven't stopped looking at them all day, especially the tall one. I have not, Naruto said, blushing. He was not a pervert, well, not a big one anyway. You can't fool me brat, Kurama stated. I've been with you since you were born, I know you better than you do. Naruto sighed, knowing the fuzzball was right. So what? He said, trying to brush it off. Is it a crime to find someone attractive? Kurama laughed at this before answering. No it's not, but not doing anything to get them in bed with you is. You're a pervert, you know that, Naruto stated, shaking his head. I can't believe I share with a perverted fuzzball, he thought to himself. Hey, I'm not a pervert, Kurama stated, I am a super pervert. You did not just do that, Naruto said in shock. It's Ero Sennin all over again. Ha 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 ha, Kurama laughed. Ero Kitsune, Naruto said and got up and head to bed, with Kurama laughing the entire way. SB. The sun started to peak above the Hokage monument and signaled for Naruto to get up and start his training. He pulled on a pair of black pants and his crystal he got from his mother. He yawned and messed up his hair. He quickly headed out of the house and into the backyard, to his personal training grounds. He looked around and took in a breath of the morning air. He smiled to himself and formed his favorite hand sign and said, "Let's get this start." Soon a large cloud of smoke filled the air. Naruto was now surrounded by over 150 clones of himself all ready to go. "Okay guys, you know the drill," the original Naruto said, and a battle cry filled the air and the battle was on. Nemu and Azane woke to a loud explosion fill the air. They both got out of bed and stood ready for battle but saw no one there. They looked around only to see something fly past their window. Nemu ran to the window and looked out. What she saw shocked her to the core. Naruto was fight clones of himself as it was the most normal thing in the world. "Nemu, what is it?" Azane said, wondering what was going on. Nemu moved from the window and said, "Look." Azane looked, saw the Naruto battle royal, and was as shocked as Nemu. "How is that possible?" she stammered and looked at Nemu. "I have no idea, but I plan to find out," she said and stormed out of the room towards the battle. What she failed to notice that she was only in her bra and panties. Azane ran after Nemu, wanting to stop her from heading outside. "Nemu, wait," she shouted, but she was too far away. Nemu headed out the back door and walked towards the battling Narutos. She stopped by one of the trees and watched the battle. There was one Naruto battling all the other ones, which Nemu thought was the original. The original Naruto was taking out clones left and right. He had set his limit at Taijutsu and his futon justice. He quickly dodged an attack from his left and flash 5 hand signs, futon, wind dragon bullet. He took in a huge breath and exhaled a large dragon made of wind. It tore through a lot of the clones and Naruto took on a group to his left with a series of punches and kicks. He then jumped in the air and went through another series of hand signs, futon, wind blades. With a wave of his hand, a huge blade of wind tore through the rest of the clones. Naruto landed in a crouch waiting to see if any more clones were left. After a few moments he stood up, ran his hand through his hair, and sighed. "Need to get faster," he said to himself as he stretched. Nemu watched this and noticed that he was shirtless. She saw that was well built, not overly like a bodybuilder but like a martial artist. Nemu also noticed that he also had a lot of scars all over his torso, but the one that stood out was the one near his heart. It was the size of a fist. What happened to him for that type of scar to happen? Nemu thought. She noticed that he was walking her way and stepped out from her hiding place and said, "Naruto, can I talk for a moment?" Naruto looked up and saw Nemu but quickly turned away from her, blushing up a storm. "Hi Nemu," he stammered, but in his mind he was thinking, why is she only in her bra and panties? Kurama on the other hand was smiling up a storm. "You are so lucky kid, take her now." "Shut it Kurama," Naruto said to Kurama. He kept his eye on the ground and said, "Hi Nemu, how are you doing today?" "I am fine," Nemu said but noticed something. Naruto wasn't looking at her. "I am unattractive," she thought. "Naruto, is there a reason why you are not looking at me?" Naruto didn't answer for a moment before he said, "Nemu, aren't you forgetting something?" Nemu thought for a moment then said, "No, I am not." Naruto turned his head and once again got an eyeful of Nemu's body. She was beautiful. She was slender with all the right curves in the right places. "Are you sure?" Naruto said with emphasis. Nemu thought for a moment before she felt a clawed draft against her skin. She looked down at herself and saw she was only in her bra and panties. "Excuse me for a moment," Nemu said, turning red, and ran inside. Azane was heading outside to get Nemu when she ran past as fast as possible. Azane sighed. "I guess she finally noticed," she said, and noticed Naruto outside shirtless. She blushed and took a few moments to look over the blonde. "They don't make them like that anymore," she thought to herself with a blush. Naruto had finished his shower and was walking out of his room rubbing a towel on his hair to get it dry quickly. He removed the towel from his head and suddenly saw a dressed Nemu standing in front of him. She wore a simple blue short kimono, a white cord holding it closed. Naruto stood frozen, as he held the towel covering his lower region tightly, not wanting to fall. "What is she doing in here?" he thought as he tried to slowly inch his way back to the bathroom. "Maybe she secretly wants you to jump her bones," Kurama stated with a wide smile in his face, as he lay down in the cage. "I say it a chance you can't pass up," Here is the new material for the next Ika Ika M Wahahaha. Naruto ignored Kurama and turned his attention back to Nemu. She had not moved from her spot in front of Naruto and seemed to be studying him. Nemu, he stated slightly embarrassed tone as he stood there half. Why are you in my room? Nemu walked over to Naruto and put her hand on his bare chest. This made Naruto freeze up even more as Nemu's fingers slowly ran over his left pectoral muscle. Muscle mass is well defined, Nemu stated as she traced her fingers further around Naruto's chest. Naruto. Why, yes, Naruto stuttered as his body slowly started to heat up, at Nemu's constant touch. Your powers from before, she stated as she pushed Naruto against the wall next to the bathroom door. Would you please allow me to experiment on your body to find out exactly how they work? She said with a serious tone as she leaned in closer to him. Naruto just stared at Nemu, eyes wide in shock as his brain tried to process her request. Kurama had listened to the entire conversation and was laughing his head off. Tears flowed from the fox's eyes as he laughed, this was just too good. Nemu waited for Naruto's reaction but saw that he was in some form of shock. She wondered why he was acting this way. She had just asked a simple question, it was the same question she asked that Quincy boy back home. Naruto, she called as she waved a hand in his face, slightly concerned. Naruto noticed the hand waving in his face and soon slowly blinked his eyes as his mind restarted. Unfortunately he lost his grip on his towel and it fell to the floor, leaving him completely to the world. Naruto felt the cold breeze against his skin. Nemu noticed the dropped towel, so I take it we can start the experiments? She asked with a hint of excitement in her voice as she tilted her head to the side slightly. Suddenly Naruto let out a scream that was heard throughout the village. SB. Azane set the table so everyone could eat. She had spent the morning making breakfast for everyone, since Naruto was cleaning himself up after his training session. She had spent most of the morning blushing after she had seen the shirtless Naruto. She had seen many men shirtless, since she worked in the 4th division, and she hardly paid attention to them, unless it specifically had to deal with their medical treatment. Naruto shirtless was one of the few times she had time to appreciate the shirtless male form. She wondered what it would feel like to lean against his chest and rest her head against him. She quickly shook her head of these thoughts. Bad Azane, she scolded herself as she walked around the kitchen. No naughty thoughts. She walked over to the counter by the stove and slowly turned it on. When she had first walked into the kitchen she had to marvel at its size. It was a fairly open kitchen with a small island in the middle, all the appliances were stainless steel, and the cabinets were of a dark oak wood. It was an amazing kitchen and Azane was happy to be able to use it. It took her a few moments to get her bearing in the kitchen, and made sure to locate all the pots and pans, as well as the pantry before she even started cooking. Her sister once had used the 6th division kitchen and nearly burned it down. How can someone nearly burn down a division by boiling water? Azane thought with a hint of disappointment, as she began to gather the food from the cabinets and fridges. She planned on making an omelet, filled with Genoa salami, cheddar cheese, and some green onions. She was about to break the eggs into the heated pan when a scream tore through the house. Azane quickly set the eggs down and ran down the hallway toward the bedrooms. She looked around and saw one door open. She ran over quickly, entered the room, and froze. Standing on the other side of the room was Nemu, pinning a Naruto to the wall with her body. She couldn't believe her eyes and blinked several times to make sure that what she saw was real. Naruto saw Azane and gave her a pleading looking, "Help me," he stated as Nemu continued to run her hands against his body. Azane quickly overcame her shock and ran across the room, jumped over the bed and pulled Nemu away from Naruto. "Nemu, what are you doing?" she asked in a hurried tone, trying not to look at the blonde reaching for a fallen towel, a blush spread across her face. Nemu looked at Azane with confusion. "I was simply conducting my preliminary physical on Naruto," she stated in a knowing tone as a notebook suddenly appeared in her hands. "I will be conducting several experiments on him to discover where his powers he displayed earlier today come from." Azane just stared at Nemu with a dumbfounded look on her face. "You were going to experiment on Naruto?" Azane stated in a slightly shocked tone. Nemu just nodded as she continued to write in her notebook. "Yes, I was," she stated as she finished writing and closed the notebook. But by your reaction and the reaction of the sub. I mean Naruto. This is something I should not do, is that correct? Azane nodded. Yes, she stated in a relieved tone as she looked at the blank face of Nemu. I don't think that experimenting on our caretaker would be the best thing to do. Nemu nodded in understanding. Would it be better to capture a subject and experiment on them? She replied in a calm tone, much to Azane's annoyance. Nemu, Azane stated in a calm tone as she looked over at her partner. I don't think that kidnapping someone to experiment on is the best way to learn about the new power. We should see if Naruto can get us the information. Nemu was silent for a few moments as she processed Azane's reasoning. She concluded that it was best to gather more information before beginning experiments. Understood, she stated in a thankful tone and quickly turned to face Naruto. He was still getting dressed and had only gotten his pants on. Naruto. He jumped at the sound of his name as he quickly secured a belt to hold his pants in place. Yes, Nemu, he replied in an embarrassed tone as he looked over at her. What is it? Can you provide any information on the power you were displaying earlier? She asked as she held out her notebook, anticipating his answer. Naruto had quickly put on a shirt as she asked her question, and had just finished pulling his head through the hole for his shirt. It chakra, he said as he straightened his shirt. Chakra, Nemu stated as she wrote down the word. What is chakra? How does it work? Can anyone use it? Naruto was once again confused by all the questions. Azane placed a hand on Nemu's shoulder. Let me take care of it. She stated in a calming voice and Nemu nodded. She turned and looked at Naruto and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, pulling him out of his confusion. Naruto, Nemu and I do not know what chakra is, she stated with a smile. Can you explain what it is to us, or is there someplace we can learn more about it? Naruto smiled and nodded as he thought of places they can go. Well, there is always the academy. He stated, but knew that was a bad idea. They were currently out for the summer and Iruka was out with Shizune, so that was a bad idea. Well, there the library. Suddenly Naruto felt himself against the wall again and saw Nemu pinning him to the wall. A fire-like look in her eyes. A library, where is it? She asked in an excited tone, showing more emotion than Azane had ever seen. It on the north side of the village, Naruto stated in a scared tone as Nemu stared at him, not blinking at all. She led Naruto off the wall and pulled him toward the door, then let us be off. She stated as she dragged Naruto behind her. SB. Nemu sat in the midst of several tall stacks of books. Once they have arrived at the library, Nemu had proceeded to empty the shelves of all the books pertaining to the history of the elemental nations and the shinobi. She tried to gain access to books on chakra and justice but was denied because they were for registered shinobi only. Therefore, she proceeded to read all she could about the land. She learned of the 5 major shinobi villages. There was the village hidden in the mist, clouds, rock, sand, and leaves. She learned of the 3 of the 4 great shinobi wars. This was only due to the fact that the 4th had ended only a few short years ago. Naruto watched in awe as Nemu finished book after book. He heard of fast readers, but this was just insane. Azane on the other hand was enjoying a light romance novel that she had found in the fiction section. It was about a leaf ninja love that was kidnapped and the length he would go to save her. She sighed to herself and wished she had someone like that, but alas, no one in the Soul Society was like that. As she read, she noticed a tall ninja with gravity-defying silver hair walk past with a small blue book in his hand, and every so often he would giggle perversely. She wondered what the big deal about that book was. She had noticed several men and women reading it, and if he was reading while walking, it must be good. She got up and headed towards the shelves, determined to find a copy. Naruto watched the two as they read and smiled. He was glad that they were having a good time, but he was bored. He pulled out a scroll and unsealed a pen in a black notebook. He made sure no one was near him and he proceeded to write. It was a known fact that Naruto had continued the Ika Ika series in Jiraiya's honor. He had made it less smut and more story-driven. He still included the explicated scene but not as many as he old master. Most of his idea came from talking with Kyuubi. The only stipulation that was placed on high, by Tsunade. This was if he ever peeked on the women's bath he would end up 6 feet under. He was currently working on his latest edition, Ika Ika, Desert Nights. It was rumored that this would be the best one yet. As he wrote, he didn't notice his old sensei Kakashi walk over to him. "Hey Naruto," Kakashi said, causing Naruto to jump and close his notebook quickly. He turned around and saw Kakashi standing over him. "Hi Kakashi-sensei, how have you been?" Kakashi smiled and giggled like a pervert. "I've been good, just enjoying your lasted edition," he said with an eye smile. Naruto rolled his eyes. "I can see that," he stated and proceeded to seal back up his notebook. Kakashi noticed this and a glint came to his eye. "Is that the last draft for the new Ika?" he asked sweetly, eyeing the seal on Naruto's arm. Naruto gave Kakashi a dirty look. "No. But, just a little peek," Kakashi said, trying to get the scroll, but Naruto quickly put it in a seal on his jacket. "No," Naruto said again. "Last time I let you read it beforehand, I didn't get it back at all. I had to track you down and pry it from your hand, remember?" Kakashi smiled and rubbed the back of his head nervously. "Sorry," he said, hoping to earn some Ika points, but Naruto wasn't budging. "Sorry Kakashi-sensei, you have to wait for it like everyone else," Naruto said and got up. Kakashi sighed and walked away, disappointed he didn't get to read the new one. While this little conversation had been going on, Azane tried to find a copy of the small blue book but couldn't find a copy on the shelves. She noticed a small orange book with the same title and she picked it up. She walked back over to the table Nemu was sitting at and took the seat across from here. She opened the book and started reading. At first, she blushed a bit, but the further she read the more red she turned. She read to about the 5th chapter before snapping the book shut. She was as red as a beet. Who would write such detailed smut, she thought as she set the book down. Nemu looked up from her current book when she heard Azane slam the orange book shut. Nemu wondered what was in the book to make Azane turn such a dark shade of red. Nemu closed her book and reached for the orange one, but Azane picked it up quickly. "This is not a good read," she stated quickly, still blushing. Nemu looked at her with confusion on her face but quickly shrugged it off and went back to her book. Azane walked quickly over to the help desk and turned in the book to the librarian. The librarian saw the blush on Azane's face and the copy of the Ika in her hand. She took pity on the poor girl and took the book away from here. "This is from the old series," the librarian told Azane. "Only old men and perverts read this one." She pulled out a blue-covered book and handed it to Azane. "These are the ones you want to read. The new author has made it into a respectable series, enjoy." Azane took the book and looked at it interest. The title was Ika, Lonely Nights. She opened the book and read the first page. At first she thought it was going to be like the first book, but as she read, she was pulled into the story. The librarian watched with a smile as Azane walked back to read the small blue book in comfort. She then noticed Naruto walking around the shelves and pulled out her own copy of the blue book and walked over to him. "Excuse me," she said, getting his attention. She held out the book and a pen. "Can you please sign this for me?" Naruto smiled and replied, "Sure, I love to. Who should I make it out to?" "Asa Yamada," Asa said with a blush. Naruto smiled and opened the book, taking the pen. He wrote, "To Asa, with love. Naruto Uzumaki." He handed back the book and pen and watched as her face lit up. "Thank you," she said and leaned in close to him. "If you ever have writer block, I would love to help you out." Naruto blushed and replied, "I'll keep that in mind." As his mind started to go wild, Kyuubi had a huge smile on his face and said to Naruto, "Take her now, you know you want to." As he viewed Naruto daydream, Naruto blushed and replied, "Shut up, Aro Kitsune." Kyuubi just laughed at him and left him be. Nemu had just finished her last book and sat up. She proceeded to take all the books back to their places on the shelves. It took her several moments due to the fact that most of the books were from different sections. She walked over to Azane and looked over her shoulder. Azane didn't notice. She was so absorbed in her book she failed to notice Nemu at all. Nemu began to read over Azane's shoulder, wondering why she was so absorbed in this book. They both got to a certain part and both blushed. "Can a woman really bend like that?" Nemu said, startling Azane. Azane quickly closed the book and stared up at Nemu a little peeved. "Don't scare me like that," she stated as she got up out of her chair, the blue book still in hand. "I am sorry if I have startled you," Nemu said, as she tilted her head to the side. "It just you were so absorbed in that book, I was wondering what was in it that had your attention." Also, it was a fair question. Can we really bend like that? Azane blushed at what Nemu was implying and said, I don't know, you have to try it to know. Nemu nodded, and looked around. There are many males here that could help us prove if it is possible, she stated as she looked at the males in the library, when her eyes settled on Naruto. Azane blushed even more at Nemu's suggestion and quickly shook her head. No more naughty talk, she shouted, drawing everyone's attentions to her. Azane stood frozen and slowly sank back into her chair, wishing that Captain Unohana was there to make them look away. S.B. Mayuri stood in front of the screen, his eye filled with frustration. He couldn't find them at all. Everything he tried had no effect, and it was like trying to find a needle in a haystack that was in another haystack, locked in a safe in the most secure place on earth. Where could those blasted female be? He muttered to himself as he tried to locate their Raryoku. They were able to locate the lieutenant's badges after they were able to get rid of the world's natural interference. Unfortunately, the lieutenants were not with the badges. It seemed they were left in what once resembled a camp. He had used the world viewer to search the area for about 10 square miles for any sign of the lieutenants, but they were nowhere to be found. So he decided to see if he was able to find Raryoku, but the natural interference was acting up again. Damn this interference, Mayuri stated as he typed away at his computer. He had ordered most of the research division to search for the lieutenants, and many were currently working on getting better filters so they could view the world better. Many were running around and papers were scattered around the observation room. This was the scene Captain Unohana has come to see as she entered the research division. She had come for an update on the search for the lieutenants on the orders of the head captain. She walked slowly through the hallways of the research and came upon the lab where the search was taking place. What a mess, she thought as she walked inside. It was a dimly lit room filled many different monitors hanging on the walls. Captain Kuretsuchi sat in front of the largest monitor as was working at a quick pace, not even bothering to check the other researcher work. Unohana walked over to him. Captain, she stated in her calm voice, I have come for an update on the search. As she stood behind him, watching the screen, Captain Kuretsuchi grumbled to himself as he continued to work. There is nothing to report, he stated in a demeaning tone as his finger flew across the keyboard. We have yet to locate them. Once we have, then I will report it to the head captain. Unohana let a slight frown graces her face as she listened to Mayuri's words. Just remember, Mayuri, she said with a sharp tone, you must find them, or you will answer to me. Mayuri said nothing as he continued to work. After a few moments of silence he spoke. Are you going to hover all day or let me work? He stated as he took his hands off the keyboard. Captain Unohana just turned and walked away, leaving Mayuri to his task. One that he could not fail or his life would be forfeit. S.B. After the little outburst at the library, Azane had rushed out and back into the village, with Naruto and Nemu not far behind. Azane just moved as fast as she could to put as much distance between the library and herself. She had never felt more embarrassed in her life. Not even when her friends would make fun of her weird dreams. Her face had never been this red and she just wanted to be alone. Why did I say that? She thought as she slowly came to a stop in what seemed to be a park. It was a large and spacious area filled with trees and a small playground. A stone path led through the park and benches lined the walkway. The park was mostly women and children, who were happy and enjoying their day. Azane sat down on the nearest bench and tried to get over her embarrassment, but it was still too fresh in her mind. Azane, a male voice called from across the park and she turned to see Naruto and Nemu rushing over to her. Naruto reached her first and gave her a worried look. Are you okay? He asked concerned as he took a seat next to her on the bench. You left kind of quick. I'm sorry, she stated in a quiet tone, not wanting to look Naruto in the eye. She didn't want to look at him for fear he would notice the blush spread across her face. While she had been reading the little blue book, she had been picturing herself and Naruto starting to do the acts. She didn't know why she picked Naruto, but he just seemed to fit for her. Naruto put a hand on Azane's shoulder. Hey it Oaks, he stated in a caring tone. I was just worried. Just don't run off by yourself again. Azane nodded, but still wouldn't look at Naruto. S.B. Urahara sat at his desk. He had just received hell butterflies from the Soul Society. It seems that Mayuri had discovered a new world separated from their own and sent 2 lieutenants to investigate. Unfortunately they have yet to contact the Soul Society and it'd been 2 weeks since their departure. Head Captain Yamamoto had asked him to look over Mayuri design and see if he could find the lieutenants and possibly help with research. This intrigued him. With the discovery of this world there was a whole new source of knowledge that he could obtain and teach to others. He smiled to himself as he decided to help. "Hey Tessai," he called and a large masculine man entered the room. "Yes Kazuki. Get my tools, we got a little project to build," Urahara said with a smile. Tessai nodded and went to the training area. As he headed out of his office he saw a young girl with long orange hair walk through his shop door. "Sorry I'm late everyone," Orihime called with a large smile on her face. After the winter war she had started to work at Urahara's candy shop. The pay was okay but she was also training her powers so she could get stronger. She was glad she had friends that protect her with all their might but she wanted to stop being a burden. So she trained hard and had gotten better at using her shields. She walked into the back and put on her work apron, this showed off her impressive figure and bust. She smiled at everyone and set to work. Urahara watched her work and smiled. "Hey Orihime," he called, getting her attention. "Yes Mr. Urahara," she said with a smile. "I'm going to need your help with something in the training area," he said. "It seems that the Soul Society needs my help." Orihime was ecstatic. She was going to be able to help her friends. "I will be right there," she said but tripped over her feet falling down. "Owie. Are you all right?" Ururu said as Orihime rubbed her backside in pain. "Yeah I fine," she replied getting up. "You know you still a klutz," Jinta said only to get hit in the head by Urahara. "It not nice to be mean to girls," he said as Jinta rubbed his head trying to alleviate the pain. "I'm sorry," Jinta mumbled and then ran out to the front of the shop. Orihime sighed. She wanted to tell him that it was okay, but he ran away a little too fast. She turned to Urahara and said, "Shall we get started?" He simply nodded and they went to the secret training ground to start work on the project. SB, Nemu, Azane, and Nordo walked toward the local Dango shop for lunch after the adventure at the library. Azane had chosen the Dango shop because she was in the mood for something sweet. It was a good way to get over her embarrassment by drowning herself in sweets, so Dango was the meal of the day. They walked through the busy streets of Konoha to the restaurant district and soon found themselves in a street filled with all different food vendors, from small movable food carts to large chain restaurants such as Konoha Fried Chicken. They walked through the crowded streets making their way to Anko's Dango shop. After the Fourth Great Shinobi War, Anko was found that reviving Orochimaru had drained her of nearly all of her chakra, leaving just enough to live. So since she couldn't be a shinobi, she decided to open her very own Dango shop. It had taken all her skill and knowledge of Dango, as well as a little of her skills for her time at IT department to get her shop open as soon as she got back into the village. It had become the go-to place for Dango and Anko couldn't be happier. She did miss the shinobi life, but she had come to terms with it and moved on in her life. They entered the Dango shop to find it busy. Waitresses were running around with plates of Dango to all the hungry customers. Anko stood behind the counter making Dango and yelling at loud customers. She wore a fishnet shirt with a tight tub top under it, a short orange skirt, and an apron, her usual trench hanging on a coat hanger near the back entrance. "Hey Snake-chan," Naruto called at the top of his lungs to get Anko's attention, flaying his arms wide. Azane and Nemu watched as Naruto waved his arms around like an idiot and waited to see the one named Anko's reaction. Anko heard Naruto call her name and quickly turned, a look of anger appearing on her face. She set down her uncooked dango, hopped over the counter and charged at Naruto. "Damn brat," she shouted as she grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the nearest table. "How many times do I have tell you not to call me that?" A slight blush on her face. Naruto slowly lifted his head off the table, a large bruise forming on his face. "But Snake-chan," he whined as he stood up slowly, a little sway in his step. "Snake-chan is Snake-chan." Anko turned away, a larger blush appearing on her face. "Whatever you say brat," she stated and turned to look at Nemu and Azane. "Who are your friends?" "This is Nemu Kuretsuchi and Azane Kotetsu," he said as he introduced the pair, as he put his hand behind his head. "They are here to try your world-famous dango." Anko smiled as she walked over to Nemu and Azane. She put her arms around the pair and led them toward the counter. Well then, let's show them how great Dango is, she said with a crazed smile on her face. The end. Now we will see you in the next video.